You'll need to stop saying I look like a Bond villain, okay? Just because I got the hairstyle, I got the evil cat in my lap, and I plan on overthrowing governments just in order to restore the Roman Empire doesn't make me a bad guy, okay? In fact, I'm an awesome guy because I'm going to be telling you today about the Iberian maps that have been released by Paradox Tinto, showcasing 11 new map modes, the complete political layout and every other layout of the Iberian Peninsula. And not only am I going to go through the Tinto talk, but I'm also going to give you guys a historical background for the entirety of Iberia whilst I'm reading through the dev diary. Also, if you enjoy the content, you're going to love my entire European political map, link in description. It was posted just a few days ago, and yes, it's basically this map right over here. Now let's get digging, because on the 17th of May, Tinto Maps 2 was published, revealing everything you need to know about the Iberian Peninsula, with next week we'll be getting an insight into the French lands. This was once again published by Pavia, so do make sure to question him on his history, because he is a history enjoyer and a historian himself. He gave out this challenge to the community, so if you see anything that's not accurate, go over to the forums and bash his historical knowledge with backed up sources and evidence, okay? Don't just trust me, bro, on your sources, please. He also wants to mention that there's more than 70 action points from feedback received on last week's Netherlands map. So I want to give you guys a big thank you for that, because that is 100% all the feedback you guys have been giving out, both on this video itself or the previous video and on the forums, has actually been taken into account by Paradox, and they have started implementing changes upon that feedback. Now the first map, of course, is the political map, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of a close-up for this. Now obviously the main player here is the Crown of Castile. We also have Portugal with its never-changing borders, Aragon. We have a slightly bigger Navarra than we have in EU4. We have parts of the northern bits here into France. We also have Andorra, which we have the color for Andorra, and I have to say this is a beautiful color. It's going to be amazing once I conquer all of Iberia and make it this color, of course. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do Andorra as my third run with EU5, because we already decided Byzantium Brandenburg is going to be the first two, okay? That goes without saying. You might be wondering, what is this in the corner here, MAL? That is the Kingdom of Majorca. They do have possessions in France, as well as Roussillon belongs to the Kingdom of Majorca. Eventually, once the kingdom is directly integrated into the Aragonese crown, which would be in a few years from the start date, the Roussillon would of course be passed on to Aragon. The islands here, Majorca itself, Ibiza, and I forgot, Balearic or something, would of course become a part of the Aragonese crown, and the northern possession here would go to France. Take note, even though it's a separate kingdom unto itself, it's still ruled by a cadet branch of the Aragonese at the start date, so keep that in mind. Just like Aragon at the start date also has two holdings in the Balkans. I am of course talking about the Duchy of Athens and Neopatria. Both of these they're a part of the Crown of Aragon, so it's going to be interesting to see how the Byzantines are going to deal with this, right? I don't know. You're going to have to go to war with the Aragonese if there's no any specific event in order to get a hold of the entirety of the Balkans. This is just so Balkanized, it's absolutely insane. But let's return to the Iberian Peninsula, because there's more things happening in the south. We have Granada, that is basically the same size as it is in EU4, with a few extra lands in the northern bits, northeastern bits. But we also have Morocco directly controlling the Gibraltar area here, and parts of what would be Granada in EU4, I guess. We can also see a little bit of a sneak peek into North Africa. This would be some of the Barbary states, and Tunis onto the side here, just a little bit of Tunis we have. There you go. This should technically be Tunis, I guess. At first glance, I have to say that Castile does seem to have some pretty beautiful borders, and I like to see the divide. As we go in the maps, we're going to see the proper divide between the cultures, and one of the best parts about this dev diary is that we get some answers to some of the more asked questions in the community. What about the Muslim minority living under the Crown of Aragon, Castile, and Portugal? They are there, they are represented, as are the Navarrese over in the northern bits. Actually, let me pull that up. So this, in essence, is the cultural map of the Iberian Peninsula. Very, very different from what it looks like in EU4. We've got Galician being predominant in the area of Galicia. We also have Astur-Leones, and we also have Castilian, of course, Catalan, Aragonese, and Basque in the north. Basque having significantly more, as you would expect by this period in time, with a pretty sizable amount of Basque people in the southern or southwestern parts of the French areas as well, or Gascon, I guess, at the start date, right? Because this is Aquitaine at the end of the day that has is one area that is majority Basque and another area that is, I guess, 50-50, right? Or below 50% Basque, really. Because then if it was above 50%, it would be red with hashes of blue, right? So what culture is this? We only see Guedocian. Languedocian? Languedo? I don't think I've ever heard of that. I'm actually curious. I don't know what culture group that would be. You also see a lot of little hashes around. That is Andalusians. So you can see here Andalusia, for example, is the majority with above 50% of people living in being Andalusians and below 50% being Aragonese, whilst the reverse is happening here. 50% plus is Aragonese and below that is Andalusians. That is because obviously the Iberian Peninsula was for basically 700 years under the control of the Muslim invaders, and that left its mark. Obviously there was a process in which a lot of people got converted to Islam, adopted the traditions and ambitions, no, not really the ambitions, but the traditions for sure, and the religion, of course, played a major part in the lives of these people. However, they quickly got overshadowed and pushed down by the various Christian kingdoms, and at our start date we only have Andalusian majority in the very southern bits of the Iberian Peninsula. If we check the religious map mode and then we overlap that with the cultural map mode, it's basically the same hashes, Andalusians being in the exact same spots as the Muslims are. Now, from a historical standpoint, these wouldn't technically be Andalusians. It would be the Mudehar, which were like a sort of a mixture between, you know, it was basically the people that converted to Islam from the Iberian Peninsula. What Paradox has done is they've merged both of them into one group, and as such, they're all Andalusians. There's also Sephardi Jews on the map himself that have not been properly shown just yet. That's because they're not a majority or even the first minority in any of these areas. They would probably be like 4% overall in some provinces at a maximum, and I'm being generous, but they are represented, of course. When you go to the chart, there's like 5 religions represented, I think, for each province. The 5 biggest, and that would be the third biggest, would be Sephardic Judaism for some provinces. You got to remember, guys, that the Muslim conquest was very fast. In fact, it was just a few years and most of the Iberian Peninsula was conquered by the Arabs, but it took the Christians 700 years to take back those lands. So the Muslims had 700 years to entrench, to convert people, to make those lands their backyard, which is what they actually did. The reason we have almost no traces of Islam in the Iberian Peninsula today is because the Catholic crown, the Catholic crowns, especially Castile for that matter, but all of them really, were very incentivized to kick out the Muslims and just keep people that would convert to Catholicism or to whatever version of Christianity they were following at the time. So they were not as tolerant as you would imagine, which makes a lot of sense, obviously, if you see it from their perspective, I guess, right? We also have a confirmation with this picture that Sunnism is going to be one of the versions of Islam. So we probably will have Shia or Shiism, Sunnism, Ibadism, or something of the sorts as the religions. So take note, these are not obviously final names. Nothing is final, so keep that in mind. It might change, might be completely different by the time the game is released. We also have Catholicism as the name for the Catholic Church. So we clearly have adjectives in EU5, that's for sure. I'm curious if you're going to be able to just release yourself as Galicia and try and take over the entirety of Iberia and make it Galician afterwards. That would be a really cool playthrough, in my opinion, to do. Oh, and I just noticed we have a little bit of culture in North Africa here, Zenati. Now, the Zenati, for those of you that don't know, are a Berber tribe, basically one of the many Berber versions. Originally, the Zenati were living around Libya, but within the 7th, 8th century, they started gradually getting pushed westwards by the Arabs. They were one of the early tribes to actually convert to Islam, and they were supporters of the holdouts of the Moroccans, as we see on the political map within the Iberian Peninsula. Morocco, despite being called Morocco, would technically be the Marinid Sultanate because it was ruled by the Marinid dynasty. The provinces that we see here within Gibraltar, taken by the Moroccans in 1337, were only taken 4 years prior to the start date. In fact, there was an attempt by Abu al-Hassan of the Marinid dynasty to give back the lands of Granada to Granada. Essentially, they wanted to re-establish a Muslim foothold, a proper Muslim caliphate, or better yet, sultanate, I don't know, whatever emirate, whatever type of rank it would have had within the Iberian Peninsula. So in 1333, the Moroccans did a naval invasion here, and they managed to capture within just a few months the Castilian holdings, and they were eventually going to push all the way into Iberia. However, in 1340, at the Battle of Rio Salada, they got their axes handed to them by the combined combined crowns of Portugal and Castile. That's right, the alliance of Portugal and Castile prevailed despite being outnumbered by the Marinids. They used some very cunning tactics and they managed to push out the Moroccans. Afterwards, Granada had the borders that we have in 1444 up until it eventually got completely conquered by the Castilians. Fun fact about this, both Castile and Portugal had a similarly named ruler. It was Alfonso. It was Alfonso the 11th for the Castilians and Alfonso the 4th for the Portuguese. Which begs the question, really. What is happening with names in history? Why is there 1,000 Louis in France? Why is there 1,000,000 Georges in the UK? Why is there 1,000,000,000 Alfonsos and Carlos and Juans in freaking Iberia? What is going on with that? Do we not have that many names? Can we not just, I don't know, let's call one of these guys for once Shkambadoo. What about another beautiful name that is Scooby? Where's Scooby the First restoring the Roman Empire as the crown of Castile? That's my real question. I mean, I'm tired of these Alfonsos, man. Come on, be original for Christ's sake. At least Aragon should be ruled in 1337 by Frederick. Frederick III ruled Aragon up until June 1337, so we should have Frederick in charge, okay? I'm just saying, because I noticed another mistake with this in the previous Netherlands area where, for some reason, Paradox decided to make the ruler of Hainaut the guy that was not yet the ruler for a few more months, right? So keep that. That's important. That's important. Months are important in history, okay? If we want to be historically accurate. Just realized I actually haven't gone through the dev diary, so let me go and see what Pavia has to say before I rant on about my historical bits. Pavia says the situation in 1337 was a strong crown of Castile under the rule of Alfonso the 11th and has overcome the problems of its troublesome minority. To the east, we have the crown of Aragon. It's named that way even though it currently doesn't appear like that on the map, so I'm guessing it's going to be the crown of Aragon on the map when the game starts, which is fighting for hegemony over the Mediterranean. That is so true. This is the moment in which Aragon started properly trying to assert itself over the Mediterranean. They had Sardinia, they had Sicily, they had Naples, Neopatras, they had Athens. Oh my god, Aragon could have restored the Roman Empire if you ask me, you know, just a few steps away from it. An offspring of it is the Kingdom of Majorca, ruled by a cadet branch of Aragon. That is true since half a century ago. Also has a couple of northern possessions centered on Perpignan and Montpellier. To the north, the Kingdom of Navarra is ruled by a French dynasty, its titular queen, Jeanne, a member of the Capetian dynasty, being married to Philippe, Lord of Evreux. To the west, Portugal has a tense relationship with Castile, with the war being fought during 1336. Fun fact about this, it's funny how the Portuguese and the Castilians were technically at war with each other, but they still managed to become bestest of friends afterwards and fight against their common enemies, the Arabs, just a couple of years later down the line. The thing with this is more of a family dispute than anything. Well, technically not family, but eventually Alfonso of Castile managed to win the war and managed to defeat the Portuguese and whoever they were supporting in Castile, and they just became bestest of friends afterwards. So let's just leave it like that, okay? Hopefully that's going to be how it's going to be left in EU5 as well. To the south, the Nasrid dynasty holds power in Granada, backed by the Marinids of Morocco. That is true. Have a foothold in the peninsula centered around Algeciras and Ronda. That's true. Algeciras is actually where the Marinids landed in 1333 and used that beachhead to take a few surrounding areas afterwards. Yes, Andorra is a starting country. Should be. It still exists today. Okay, just saying. Why is EU4 not have Andorra? That's the real question. Now we have the locations map here, and oh my god, is this a big one. So let's take a closer look. Some provinces have very few locations. So for example, in Galicia, we have this province with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locations, right? But then in the central part of Iberia, we have one province with how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 locations. What is this province actually? I would assume that this province is called Toledo. Yes, that is right. So that's the province of Toledo, which owns 11 locations. La Mancha, right below it, owns 10 locations also. There you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And Madrid owns how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 again. Okay, so a lot of provinces within the Iberian parts have 10 locations. That is in massive contrast to the Netherlands map, because if we remember, in the Netherlands map that we got last week from Tinto Maps, most provinces had like 6 locations. The bigger ones had like 8 locations. Some of them even had 5, right? So this is a big difference here. It tells me that it's going to be significantly stronger having provinces within the Iberian Peninsula than within outside of it. Look at that. What is this province here as well? This got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 11, 12. This has 12 locations. What the hell, man? What is that? That is Cuenca. Cuenca's got 12. That is the biggest I've seen so far with 12 freaking locations. That begs the question, what would be the biggest province in EU5? Because if 12 locations is a thing, then how big can they get, right? Pavia also tells us that we are aware that there's some locations that could be added here and there, as this was one of the first maps that we created. Okay, interesting. They didn't start in Sweden like with EU4. And we weren't completely sure about the location density we would like to have in the game. Some examples of possible locations that we'd like to add during a review would be Alicante. All right, a lot of locations basically. You might have noticed that Zaragoza is named Saragossa. This is not final. It's because we're using it as our testing location for the dynamic location naming system. It has different names in Spanish, Catalan, English, French, and Arabic. Okay, now these are the actual provinces. So to put it into perspective, we have 4 provinces in Galicia, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 within the Leon Kingdom, historical Leon Kingdom. I also like to see that there's like different colors on the different areas. That is very interesting. It tells me that we also have an area map that is basically comprised of different provinces. So we have in the north this area, which is this particular color, which has a lot of provinces, whilst in the center we have one main area with 4 provinces. In the south we have 2 areas, one Andalusian under Catholic control and the other one under not so much Catholic control, with a little bit of a yeah, I don't know why it's like that, but it's definitely area maps overlapping the province map mode, as we can clearly see here. Although it may look a little bit like the modern provincial borders, take into account that these are based on the provincial reforms of Francisco Javier de Burgos, which were also inspired by the cities provinces that were accountable for the Servicio de Milones during the reign of Philip II. Also, please don't focus on the province names. The language inconsistency is because we were also using them as testing ground. Okay, so we're not going to pay too much attention to the names in that case. This is the terrain map mode. This is where it actually gets really interesting in my opinion, because we have some new terrains here. So we have Arctic terrain in the mountains of the Pyrenees. Actually, let me zoom this up. There we go. This is a little bit better. So we've got oceanic all around the place in the north especially, right? But then we have Arctic, surprisingly, continental here, and then we start getting Mediterranean, which is obviously going to be very, very common around the Mediterranean, right? Because it's a very typical type of climate around the Mediterranean. We have a lot of Mediterranean even in the southern parts of the Iberian bit. We also have cold, arid around the center, continental here and there a little bit, and we have just plain out arid in the southeastern parts of the Iberian Peninsula. Now, you mix this in with the vegetation map mode and the topography, and you start to really understand. Did I just spit everywhere? I think I did. Yeah, I did. You start really understanding how much more diverse the Iberian Peninsula is and how much potential this has for really awesome tactical battles, which obviously is not really going to happen much because Iberia is very centralized. Barely going to be any battles since you're likely going to be able to inherit Aragon. You're going to easily kick out the Muslims, and you might even get a PU over Portugal. But the thing is, if say you're playing as another nation and you want to be invading Iberia, you're going to have a ton of fun here. You got hills all around the place. It's going to be really easy for the Iberian nations to defend against the French because you got the massive mountains of the Pyrenees here as well as hills to the side. Most of this area is actually not possible to pass through. You have a few passages. You got one over here, if I'm not mistaken, another one right here, and a third one here with 2 main areas you can pass afterward. Actually, that's considerably more than EU4 though, because EU4 you only have 2 areas you can enter into Iberia, the easternmost and the westernmost, whilst here we've got a lot more considering that, you know, there's only 2 in EU4. Same goes for the south here. There's a lot of plateaus apparently, hills, mountains in the south. I'm actually curious what plateau is going to be like because we have a lot of plateau in the central part as well of Iberia. What kind of bonuses or debuffs is plateau going to give us, right? Vegetation wise, it is going to be mostly grasslands, farmlands, very, very little woods, and quite a little bit of sparse, which I'm assuming is going to be some type of tundra or some type of steppe style area. Remember that sparse is one of the terrains in which the Golden Horde's unique units are going to get combat ability bonus, and I still remember that. I'm not going to forget. So fighting in sparse and grasslands for the horde is going to mean you're going to die. So don't fight the hordes in grasslands or sparse. Whatever sparse might be. Iberia has one of the most complex terrain features distribution in the entire world. You can say that again, sir. We've also discussed this week that we're not really happy about the vegetation distribution, which we'll be reworking, so feedback for this topic is especially well received. You heard that, guys. Vegetation distribution. Let them know what your opinion is, and make sure to go to the forums especially, and not just in the comment section. That would be really a great help to the development team. Quite standard cultural distribution here. Based on the different languages of Iberia, Astur Leonis was still a language back in that time, although close to being opaqued by Castilian. That is very true. After 1 century of joint ruling, the Andalusia represents not only the Muslim inhabitants of Granada and the Straits of Gibraltar, but also the Mudéjar community spread throughout much of the territory. So to put it just flat out, boys, the Mudéjar are basically the Muslim populations within Castile, Aragon, and Portugal, and they did speak a Romance-based language, so they spoke either Castilian, Aragonese, Catalan, whatever, wherever they were based. Some of them also spoke Arabic, but take note, not all of these communities spoke Arabic. Most of them were just Islamic, so they had special statuses under the various crowns and were allowed to continue to profess their faiths, but majority of them did speak the language of the kingdom under which they were a part of. Keep that in mind. We've already gone through the religious bit. The Sunni population present here matches the Andalusian population in the previous map, although it's not shown in the map mode. There's another important religious community in Iberia, the Sephardic Jews. I also mentioned about this as well, yeah, who inhabited several cities and towns. And now, boys, check this out, the raw goods. Actually, before we do that, let's also check the markets quickly. We got Barcelona market, Sevilla market, Al Jazara market, some type of Arabic market that includes parts of Granada. Also, Pavia mentions this is also a map mode that we'll be revisiting next week, and feedback is also welcome. For the first time in Paradox Grand Strategy game, there is a Mercury resource in Almaden. As for the market bid, this is not final. There is a chance that there might be even a Portuguese market separate from the Sevilla market. Who's to say? Oh, there's also a Fez market for the 2 Moroccan provinces in the south. I didn't even notice that actually earlier. Now let's go back to the raw goods because this is juicy. We've got a lot of stuff here, guys. I'm talking a lot of stuff. We have alum, which I've since found out is actually something used in the Middle Ages. It was basically some type of aluminium powder or something of the sort. Some new trade goods that we haven't seen before include lead, mercury, as mentioned before, right over here. And right next to mercury, we have confirmation that there's going to be gold mined in La Mancha, as is in EU4. We also have coal from the very start in the northern parts here. We've got saltpeter in the areas around Barcelona, which is awesome because I'm going to assume that saltpeter is going to be one of the things used to make gunpowder, and as such, it's going to be one of the most in high demand resources in the mid to late part of the campaign because everyone's going to need to make gunpowder, right? I like the distribution of coal, iron, and wool around the mountain area. Lead as well here, actually, because obviously you have iron, coal, lead, stone in the mountains, but you also have sheep, which usually there's a lot of livestock ranches around mountainous areas, that is for sure, and hilly areas too. We got some high-end goods as well. We have some dyes over here, some medicine as well, medicaments or whatever they're called. Rice we have surprisingly as well here. Fiber crops, that's a new one. I think I haven't seen that before. We have tin as well confirmed. A little bit of cotton in the south as well. And if you pay close attention, we also have a person that has not yet subscribed to the channel. I'm not sure what's gonna happen to him, but yeah, maybe he should subscribe to the channel. What do you think? We also have confirmation that elephant units are gonna be a thing. So that's Johan admitting there's gonna be elephant units, and he says that it's gonna require locally produced elephants in order to be recruited. Holy mother, this man gives so much in the comment section. I love it. Before we do read the comments, let's go ahead and take a quick glimpse over the population. There's a lot of pops in Castile, especially at this start date. Holy mother. What is the highest population province though? That's my question. We have 73,000 people in Porto in Portugal. That is a huge amount. 69,632, 82,000. Wow, that is probably the highest, isn't it? 82,000 going once. 81,000 in Toledo. Close, but not yet there. 133,000 in Barcelona. Holy mother, dude. And look at France. 121,000 just random over here as well. 87,000, 84 again. Holy snap. That's a lot in the north. That's actually a lot in the north. Surprisingly, the south is pretty low pops considering, you know, most of the action happened in the south. Well, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Like, I mean, I guess a lot of people died in wars in the south, didn't they? 82,000 is about the biggest we have in Andalusia here. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We have 176,000 in Granada. What? It feels like all the Muslims that tried to run away from the onslaught of the Catholics just ended up here. And we also, I just saw another one, 117,000 in Sevilla too. So that makes Sevilla the biggest city within the Castilian crown areas, doesn't it? I guess it does. Johan out here mentioning a very important mercury mine in Huancavelica, which is in Peru. So he's trying to allure to the fact that you're gonna need to go to the New World in order to get more mercury. Mentions that Andorra is a theocracy duchy ruled by the Bishop of Urgel Arnau de la Lorda. Pavia also mentions that Alfonso XI died sieging Gibraltar in 1350. Yes. Johann mentions the wiki says 6 million pops in Iberia, but sources we have has it at around 9 million, which is what we have it in the game. I agree with Johann on this. 1330s, it should be around 8 to 9 million population in Iberia. Iberia was properly struck by the plague as well, but not as devastating as it was in France, England, and other parts of the world, to be fair. That's gonna be it for today's video though, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Love you all. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one. Massive thank you to all of my patrons and channel members as well. I really wouldn't be able to do this without all your support. If anybody else wants to join, you will have a link in description.